More about the UN and what it does or doesn't offer to this equation.
Well, this was the right thing for the UN to do, and I'm glad that they kicked out Russia. It was led by the U.S., so in that sense, this was a successful campaign by the U.S. within the UN. But other than just being another drop in the bucket of condemnation of Russia, it's not going to make any big difference to Russia. Right now, Putin doesn't really care about being part of the Human Rights Council, and so the suspension is not significant. There's only one other country that has been suspended, by the way, in the past, and that was Libya during Muammar Gaddafi's time, when he also ordered his soldiers to shoot civilians. But what's really going to make the difference now is the provision of weapons to Ukraine. If you really want Russia to back off and to withdraw from Ukraine, the only way to do it is make sure that Ukraine has overwhelming force to meet Russia and to make Putin feel like he's trapped and he cannot have a success on the battlefield, and that will get him to the negotiating table, and likely only that. Meanwhile, things like kicking them out of the Human Rights Council and war crimes investigations are important, but those aren't going to put us over the top.
Wall Street Journal Editorial Board says this about the UN situation: the symbolism counts for something when Russia is barred from the Human Rights Council that includes the likes of Venezuela, Cuba, and China. Apparently, the Kremlin is too embarrassing as a human rights arbiter, even for the UN. Beijing worries that the vote might cause someone to bring up the re-education camps for Uyghurs in Xinjiang. Fred.
Well, I think it's a significant move. Bear in mind that this committee is usually used for bogus attacks on the United States and Israel for human rights violations. I think it's significant because it is adding to the international pressure on Russia. Russian elites, Russian generals, they will see this. And this is what we have to do to try to force Putin to make a decision to call off this war, to agree to a ceasefire, in addition to arming Ukraine to the teeth. This is a good move. It's a rare win by the Biden administration, and I give them credit for doing this.
So, of course, not unexpectedly, China spoke out against this move today. You saw that in the reporting by Kevin. Well, Senator Hawley is drawing attention again to this issue of China watching how things are playing out with Ukraine and with Putin. Senator Hawley says this: the Biden administration waited for Russia to invade before surging lethal aid to Ukraine. We can't afford to make the same mistake in the Indo-Pacific. That's why it's so important to fast-track weapons to Taiwan now, while Taiwan still has time to marshal its defenses and deter a Chinese invasion. David, do you think that'd be viewed as too provocative by China, or, given what we're watching play out now, that's a good move?
Well, we have an alliance with Taiwan, and we are supporting Taiwan, and we do provide them with weapons. If there are specific items that Taiwan needs that they don't have, the U.S. certainly should consider that. But we do have to tread carefully, because we want to make sure that right now China stays on the sidelines of the crisis in Ukraine. So far, China may be privately supporting and rooting for Russia, but they haven't provided weapons to Russia, and they haven't provided financial support to Russia, and hopefully they are not helping Russia evade sanctions. As long as that continues, it's going to be much harder for Russia to withstand the economic retaliation that the U.S. and NATO and EU have mounted against Russia, and to continue the fight against Ukraine, given that they're getting their own weapons depleted in the fight, especially because the resistance by Ukraine has been so strong. So the priority right now with respect to China is to keep them out of this conflict.